free life, transform your emotional actions to experience personal and other than Mr. Brian Derosches. No other than Mr. Brian Derosches.
Hi, Daniel.
Welcome, welcome, Mr. Brian.
Glad to be here.
Yes,
Really glad.
welcome, welcome, Mr. Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And welcome to Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that
Yes,
I
yes.
miss?
Thank you. I'm a psychotherapist in private practice. Have been for a little over 30 years. I'm what would one would call an experiential psychotherapist. That is less focused on thinking and more on what happens in the body, and as a result of that, how do we change by working on what's happening in the experience in the body. So it's experiential and neuro informed by neuroscience. So different than the other kinds of insight therapies or managing your symptoms therapies. Those are important, but they really don't produce much change, if you will. Enduring change is what I think people seek. So that's based on my history. I love what I do, and I hope to continue doing it for a long time.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Brian. Hoping for more and more empowering books like this. So, the term trigger is used anywhere now, often describe
Yeah, it
any
is.
upset. How
Yeah,
do you define true emotional trigger in the context of your work versus a normal, manageable emotional reaction?
yeah, yeah. That's a very good question, because all of us have reactions to things that happen in the world, emotional reactions, and those are mini triggers, but that activate learnings or activate memories in us. Triggers that create problems for us, that really inhibit us and get in our way, tend to be patterns that we develop, that are the common patterns that last year 34 million people sought psychotherapy because they wanted to change certain patterns that were triggered by an environment, a context, a situation, a thought, even. So triggers are the active. When we get triggered, what I call emotional learnings have been activated by something coming into us or some thought that we have. And then we have typically an anxious reaction, which then produces a set of behaviors that are protective in nature as a result of the anxiety that the triggered experience creates at that point in time. And for any one of us, I mean, I living a trigger-free life is kind of like a path to creating and managing, not more than managing, actually transforming triggers that we can identify that are in many ways unconscious to us, but now we can bring them to consciousness and actually change them at the synaptic level in the brain. The neuroscience is so clear on that. And my intent in writing this book is to bring that neuroscience in a very applicable way so that people see, hey, your problematic behaviors aren't character flaws. They're not something really wrong with me. They're actually our learned protective mechanisms to help us avoid something in the past, some knowledge that we acquired that is getting in our way. Um, Let me offer an analogy that oftentimes works, a metaphor, I should say, is you get in your car and you turn on the ignition and you put your foot on the gas. Well, that is something you want to do. You want to express yourself. You want to say no to friends because you got other things. You want to contribute in a work meeting, but somehow when you put your foot on the gas pedal to say or do something, your other foot, the left foot, goes on the brake. Your body won't let you do it. you have to stop. And you get this push and want to do this, and then bango, can't do it. And it's very frustrating. And this stopping here is our protective mechanisms. Those are the conflict, the withdrawal, the avoidance, even some depressive disorders, the people pleasing, the placating, the blame, the sarcasm, all these behaviors that we do that are maladaptive are actually adaptive in the sense that they protect us. And that message needs to get out there to people. And the process of changing, deep change, and the neuroscience of it is so clear, so clear. So that's an og explanation of what a trigger is and what it means to begin to live a trigger-free life.
Your book promises a trigger free life, which sounds almost utopian. Does this mean never feeling anger, hurt, or fear again? Or it's about changing our relationship with those sensations?
Very well put. Yes. It's about becoming, I call it trigger informed mindfulness. So it's about becoming aware that our emotional reactions, particularly patterned emotional reactions, behaviors that we want to change. And I've had several in my life that after 17 years of therapy earlier in my life, nothing much changed. I would relapse. Well, now I understand why. I understand what was happening in my brain. So living a trigger free life for me means monitoring my internal experience. And when I have a reaction, basically, what is the threat associated with that reaction? Because all of our triggers are associated with threats. The brain is a learning, predicting, and adapting process. I want to learn how to play pickleball, and so I go out and learn how to do it. That's learning skills and learning knowledge, the rules, and how to play the game. But there's another level of learning that very few of us are aware of, and it's called emotional learning. Typically occurs in the first 7 years of life, up to 15, but typically the first 7, when we learn without our awareness or without our saying, yes, I want to learn this. It's not a conscious process. We learn what causes pleasure and what causes pain. And those become what are called emotional learnings. And as we grow, we have to adapt to survive. The brain is a survival biased, very survival biased process. And so it takes what we learned in the past that we didn't know we learned. We just know it by sensation. And then we're adults, we're in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and we want to do something, or somebody says something, or we see something, or something happens, and we react sometimes very strongly because it's something that we learned a long time ago. It's, but we don't know that. You know, I will bet you, in fact, I know this to be true. The people who listen to your podcast, most of them will have had this experience, Daniel. They will have a feeling that tells them, like, oh, the feeling of what might happen. It tells them, no, I can't do this. It's a usually anxious, tight feeling. But they know it doesn't make sense. No, if I disappoint my wife, is she going to leave me? No. But if I learn that if I disappoint my parents, they ignore me, and I don't know I learned that, then the threat of disappointing my wife is very present. And when that threat gets activated, or if I think it's going to be, you feel it, then I'm going to fall back on my withdrawal, avoidance, protective mechanisms. I know that one, and I've resolved that one. I've worked through that one. The book is full of many stories like that, where people come to realize they learned something that is now, as I say, a threat prediction. Literally, If this, then this. If I express myself, if I say no to friends, if I disappoint my parents, if I tell people my ideas, if I get close to someone, then, and then you fill in the blank with what the threat is. I will be ignored. I'll be rejected. I'll be abandoned. I'll be shamed. All of these experiences that we learned in the first 7 years of life drive so much of our maladaptive adult behavior. And for the first time, we can actually transform that learning and update it for the first time in history. And that's exciting. That's very exciting.
Very exciting indeed. And what was the personal catalyst that led you from simply managing your reactions to embarking on a quest for a truly trigger free existence?
Mm. Um, in a very brief story, I wrote two books in the 1990s. One was Reclaiming Yourself, and the other one was Your Boss Is Not Your Mother. And Your Boss Is Not Your Mother, translated into 6 language, good book. But when I submitted it to the publisher, William Morrow, they said great content, but the format needs to be completely redone. And it made sense to me. And so they brought in a professional writer to help me. That was good. However, as much as I worked with that writer, I felt embarrassed. I felt like a failure. I judged myself what's wrong with me. I felt ashamed. I felt rejected, but they didn't reject me. I just felt it. And some of that has to do with my family of origin, my childhood. But I hid all those feelings and pretended everything was fine. And about 5 years, about early 2000s, I was going to start writing again. I had some ideas. I couldn't write. Daniel, I couldn't write. I would get so anxious sitting down to write. And I tried everything. I tried a writing retreat. I tried a couple of those. I had a writing coach. I had a beautiful, expensive cobalt blue pen, a new computer, prayer, meditation, EMDR. I tried all kinds of things. And I was stuck in a cycle of toxic procrastination for 10 years. And then in 2015, I went to a workshop in New York at Fordham University on a new discovery called memory reconsolidation, the neuroscience of making change at the synaptic level in the brain. When I finished, interestingly, I was the guinea pig for the workshop. There were like 30 or 40 colleagues in it, and I was the guinea pig to go through this process. When I got back to Seattle Monday morning, I started writing. The anxiety was practically gone. And it was that was the process of memory reconsolidation. Writing would trigger me. After that workshop, I was trigger free, and I started a new book. This took 7 years to write with a lot of research. Got another one. I'm excited about it now. If I hadn't gone through that experience, if I hadn't really learned what was really stopping me was my brain's what I call the emotional immunity to change. My brain had learned writing is an emotional pathogen. So if you want to write, it's like the immune system. It's like the immune system has a memory just like the brain does. And it was an emotional pathogen to my brain because whenever writing became associated with shame, rejection, embarrassment, I'm not enough, incompetence, really negative feelings. And so naturally, my survival bias brain, when I went to write, it was predicting pain and it produced anxiety, and I withdrew into the process we call procrastination. After that weekend, I vowed This changed everything in the way I work with people, the way I see the world, the way I've come to know myself. Even had even my spirituality has been deeply affected by it. Because I suddenly realized that all that we see, all the behaviors, all the things that are happening in the world that seem like irrational are actually the brain's protective mechanisms operating. And it gives me compassion for others, compassion for myself when I react. And it's like, oh no, this is all learned. This is all learned, and I can really change this. That was my epiphany, if you will, my awakening that I needed to get this word out to people as much as and as soon as possible. And I'm hoping
And
it does that.
and yes, thank you, Mr. Brian, for sharing to the world. When someone is in the grip of a triggered reaction, the logical brain goes offline. What is the most effective in the moment technique to create that crucial pause between stimulus and reaction?
Oh, yeah. We all know that as Viktor Frankl said, the space between the stimulus and the response in the nervous system is like microseconds. So, what I recommend that people do, and I do that in the book, is to begin to do a little brief inventory. What are the reactions that I'm having when I triggered? And sometimes the trigger can be very quiet. It's not like it's, it can be just, oh, we feel it in our chest. We feel it in this proprioceptive area of our body. And then to begin to inventory those. When does it happen? To really take stock of it and engage it. The predominant paradigm for psychotherapy is you don't engage it, you try to overcome it. That's like trying to overcome evolution. It doesn't work. We need to engage the brain in its survival bias and optimize it. So the first step is in the moment. It's hard to do in the moment. If you can recognize it, try not to react, but that doesn't change anything. Or afterwards, soothe yourself. Uh, that's very common. Not to say that's not good, but nothing changes, Daniel. Nothing changes when we do those things. So its first step is identifying a pattern you want to change. Secondly, is identifying what do you want to do different? What do you want to do differently? And then imagine that, and you'll feel the anxiety in your body. And the third step is to go underneath the anxiety, be with it, and I've got processes to do that. Be with it and ask, what is the threat? If I do this, in other words, I have one, give you an example. I work a lot with dentists, and many of them have problem accepting compliments. Accepting compliments for some people is very threatening because they learned in their family, if you accept a compliment, that means you think you're better than us. And there's a rejection that'll happen. This person, I created a threat prediction. If I accept a compliment, then my family will laugh at me and tell me there's something wrong with me. Well, that was unconscious to her until she put words to it. But you can imagine why the brain would want to protect that. And that she learned that when she was 4, 6, 7, 9, and 12. And, this just was a family way. Nobody could accept compliments. Now she's a very competent dentist and she's able to accept compliments because she identified what is the threat? Really? A patient says, thank you, you're so good. And you can't accept the compliment because you learned 35 or 40 years earlier that you will be rejected, laughed at, and ridiculed if you do. And that's what happens. So you create the threat prediction, and then you do what is called a prediction correction. And a prediction correction is information that actually contradicts, mismatches what the prediction says. And so for her, it was A number of times she did accept compliments, and guess what? Nobody rejected her. Nobody laughed at her. They just appreciated her. So we here have a prediction correction when this prediction, this threat prediction, is activated. Now, what's important about this step is you have to be in the activated state. And when you introduce it to the brain does an interesting thing. It's always assessing threat. And what it does, it goes, what I'm predicting and this other experience coming in, they don't match. When they don't match, the brain literally opens up the neural network that's actually back here in the subcortical regions of the right hemisphere, unwires the network where that learning is stored. It stays open for 5 hours. And during that 5 hours, you can feed it the truth. I can accept compliments because people really benefit from what I do, and I'm really open to their experience. This is what she did. And now, when people give her compliments, she smiles and just says, "Thank you so much." It's just wonderful. That is going through these steps of what is the threat? Because the threat is usually, practically all the time in the past, in the first 7 years. 2, what do I want to change? What do I want to be different? And that'll produce the threat. 3, what is a correction to that threat? 4, pairing them together. Act like Bluetooth. It's kind of like Bluetooth, You turn on your phone, you got a speaker, you got the phone and the speaker to match. Well, in this case, you're matching the threat prediction when you're in that uncomfortable state with the prediction correction. And the brain it recognizes the mismatch. And because of its survival bias, it will update the old learning with the new information. It has to. And so that's a whole different paradigm than the one we use. We're actually changing the cause of the problem and not fixated on the problem itself. It continues. When I see the miracles happen with my clients, when I see my own experience of growth and change, it's like, wow, what a healthy way to live. What a healthy way to live. And many levels, physical, emotional, and spiritual. Yeah. Wow, that's a lot of information, Daniel.
Yes, there's a lot. There's a lot, Mr. Brian. And what does the physical body play in storing and releasing these trigger patterns? Is it somatic work a key part of your methodology?
Mm. That's a great question, and very much so. Awareness, the awareness of the sensations in the body. Um, when I talk about trigger informed mindfulness, it's being mindful of what's happening in your body when stimulus comes into your body brain. Stimulus comes in. When do you feel tight? When do you get anxious? What are the situations in which that happens? When do you fall back on self-sabotaging thoughts? Nobody loves me, I'll never make it, which are all protective mechanisms, by the way. Those are all protective mechanisms. So being aware of your soma, what happens here, that's where the action is. And then if I can become aware of this, then I can learn and develop the observer capacity, which is mindfulness about, oh, I'm feeling tight. What is going on? And then beginning to think of what is the threat that I may be experiencing right now. And once again, it's looking at patterns, particularly at patterns in that regard, but very, very experiential, very experiential. Not so much here, but definitely here. I mean, here is important, but if you feel a change happening, that's when you know you've changed. When you feel the difference, it's real. If you don't feel the difference, then it's just something in your head. But there's no change here. No change there. So very much somatic and experiential. Yeah.
So, Mr. Brian, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season. Abstract poetry in second season. I'm a book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in third season, and Ma Food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101, Love Letters, Movie 101 review, our fourth season, as well as Music 101, Science 101, Sex 101, second season, and my baby podcast, Law 101, Mental Health 101, and Bible Verses 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Brian, tell us, how does this work intersect with social justice? Is there any way to be trigger free while still being fiercely compassionate and activated about injustice in the world?
Wow. Wow. You know, Daniel, I was just writing about that today, writing and thinking about that. And my answer is yes. And I'll tell
Mm,
you my thinking behind it. All social injustice is an outcome of emotional learning. Learning that is, thousands of years old from all the prejudices, racism, all of that. We all learned that. We learned that when we didn't know we were learning it. We aren't born with it. We learn it. And we learn it early. And what we have learned, we can unlearn and update. But that has to be done on an individual basis. But once individuals do that and start to free themselves from the tyranny of social injustice, because it's an emotional tyranny, in my opinion. And it's very deep in the emotional unconscious. But as individuals bring it to awareness, as they begin to become curious, as they begin to realize they are not what they feel and think, that they are so much greater, and free themselves from that tyranny, I think that's where that bottom up starts to happen. It's a change that happens one person at a time, but those people all influence others. I feel very passionately and strongly about this. Um, I have two adopted children from Honduras. They have suffered social and racial injustice. And yeah, yeah, yeah.
And thank you for sharing for that for us, Mr. Brian. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, especially living through the free life. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your debut book?
Yes. The feedback I'm getting from people is it's a nice design. I've got 11 drawings of how basically the whole process works in the brain. Um, it's a different way of thinking than we have taught, but it's a freer way of thinking, and it's really based in an integration of science, practical neuroscience in everyday life. And that's why I called it living a trigger-free life. It's what I'm focused on doing. It's my path from now on. As long as I'm alive, I want to monitor my triggers and evolve, just evolve as a human being. And I invite everybody else to do the same.
Yes, people, evolve for your legacy to the world. Yeah, so, Mr. Brian, thank you so much for your
You're so,
time.
I just appreciate the time and the
Like
energy of what you do.
likewise. So, Mr. Brian, thank you so much. So much. Thank you so much. And let's do our abstract essay after this. Mordicon people, see you soon.